What if everything you've ever believed about reality is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion, one that you yourself have been building brick by brick, thought by thought, since the moment you were born? That might sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but stay with me here, because what I'm about to share with you isn't fantasy. It's grounded in the groundbreaking work of one of psychology's most brilliant minds and a mystic who cracked the code of manifestation decades before it became mainstream. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying the depths of human consciousness, and what he discovered shook the foundations of how we understand reality itself. Jung wasn't just interested in why we think the way we do. He wanted to understand how our thoughts literally construct the world we experience. And here's where it gets fascinating. He found that consciousness doesn't simply observe reality like a passive spectator watching a movie. No, consciousness actively participates in creating that reality, shaping it through invisible patterns buried deep within our psyche. But before we dive deeper into this mind-bending concept, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now here's where Jung's insights become truly revolutionary. Has this ever happened to you? You believe something so deeply, maybe that opportunities never come your way, or that financial abundance is meant for other people, not you, and then your life seems to prove you right over and over again. That's not coincidence. Jung discovered that we're constantly interacting with what he called an informational field, an invisible matrix where mind and matter meet, and everything you've been conditioned to accept as unchangeable truth is actually just a reflection, a mirror image of the patterns you've unconsciously programmed into this field. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. While Jung was unraveling the architecture of consciousness from a psychological perspective, a man named Neville Goddard was teaching something remarkably similar from a completely different angle. Goddard didn't speak the language of psychology or neuroscience. Instead, he spoke about the power of assumption, about how the external world is nothing but a perfect reflection of your internal mental state. And here's the key that connects these two visionaries. Goddard discovered that transformation doesn't require years of therapy, expensive programs, or complicated rituals. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the mechanism Goddard revealed is almost suspiciously simple. He taught that when you repeat a thought, not just casually, but with genuine emotional conviction, something profound begins to happen. The boundaries between your inner world and outer reality start to dissolve. What Jung understood as the malleable nature of consciousness, Goddard translated into a practical method that anyone could use. And when you combine Jung's understanding of how the mind constructs reality with Goddard's technique of intentional repetition, you unlock something extraordinary. Because if consciousness truly shapes our experience, and if repetition can reprogram the deepest patterns within that consciousness, then we're looking at something far more profound than positive thinking or wishful hoping. We're talking about a transformation mechanism that's been hiding in plain sight for centuries, one that ancient traditions understood intuitively, but that modern science is only now beginning to validate. Think about it for a moment. Every major spiritual tradition on earth has used repetition as a core practice. Buddhist monks chant mantras thousands of times. Christians recite prayers with devotion. Islamic practitioners repeat sacred phrases during their daily rituals. Were all these civilizations simply wasting their time on superstition? Or did they tap into something fundamental about how consciousness operates, something that goes beyond cultural beliefs and touches the very fabric of how the mind interfaces with reality? Here's the hidden truth that most people never grasp. Repetition isn't just about memorizing information or building habits. When you repeat something with genuine emotional engagement, you're doing something far more powerful. You're essentially broadcasting a signal, tuning your mind to a specific frequency. And just like a radio that picks up stations based on the frequency it's set to, your consciousness begins attracting experiences, opportunities, and circumstances that match that new vibration. If this kind of content speaks to you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the deeper explorations we do. Here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning of what we're uncovering together. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the mechanics behind this process changes everything. Your subconscious mind, that vast, powerful part of you operating beneath conscious awareness, has an interesting characteristic that most people never realize. It cannot tell the difference between something that's actually happening in the physical world and something that's vividly imagined with strong emotion. This isn't some mystical claim. Neuroscience has demonstrated that when you imagine an experience with sufficient intensity, your brain activates the same neural pathways as if you were living that experience in real time. This is where the real impact of repetition reveals itself. When you repeat an affirmation 100 times, not mindlessly, but with focused attention and emotional conviction, you're triggering a cascade of neurological changes. Specific networks in your brain begin firing together, and as neuroscience tells us, neurons that fire together wire together. The idea you're repeating literally becomes encoded in your mental framework, shifting from being just a thought to becoming an accepted part of your internal reality. Jung understood that the mind could enter altered states where the rigid boundaries between what's mental and what's physical start to dissolve. In these states, consciousness becomes more fluid, more receptive to transformation. Goddard approached it from a different angle, but arrived at the same destination. When you affirm something with absolute certainty, you're not trying to convince the universe of anything. You're shifting your own internal vibration, and the external world has no choice but to reorganize itself to match that new frequency. This isn't about manifesting sports cars or lottery wins. It's about understanding that every single thing you currently accept as your reality was at some point programmed into your consciousness through repetition. The beliefs about what you're capable of, what you deserve, what's possible for someone like you, all of these were repeated to you or by you until they became invisible walls defining your life. But here's the revelation that changes the entire game. If those limitations were installed through repetition, they can be uninstalled and replaced through the same process. But this time, done consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what you're creating. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to reprogram," if this is starting to make sense to you. The question most people ask at this point is, if it's really this simple, why doesn't everyone do it? And that's precisely where the hidden truth reveals itself. The barrier isn't in the technique itself, it's in the mental walls we've constructed over a lifetime, walls so familiar that we mistake them for reality itself. These barriers weren't built in a day. They were installed slowly, methodically, through thousands upon thousands of repetitions that happened so gradually you never even noticed. When you repeat an affirmation 100 times with genuine feeling, something remarkable begins to happen. You're not just saying words into empty space. You're confronting every invisible limitation that's been running the show behind the scenes of your life. Each repetition is like taking a sledgehammer to a wall that's been standing between you and the reality you actually want to experience. But here's the crucial difference that separates those who transform from those who stay stuck. Mechanical repetition accomplishes nothing. It's the emotional conviction behind each word, the feeling of it being already true, that creates the breakthrough. Think about how your current belief system was formed. Nobody sat you down at age 5 and asked if you wanted to adopt specific beliefs about money, success, or what you're capable of achieving. Those beliefs were installed through repetition, weren't they? Your parents said certain things repeatedly. Teachers reinforced particular ideas. Society broadcasted specific messages over and over until they became the invisible laws governing your decisions, your relationships, your entire life trajectory. You absorbed these patterns unconsciously, accepting them as objective truth rather than recognizing them for what they really are. Conditioned responses that can be reprogrammed. Jung and Goddard, coming from completely different worlds, both arrived at the same revolutionary insight. The conditioning process works in both directions. If a limiting pattern was established through repetition, it can be dismantled using the exact same mechanism. The difference now is that you're doing it with full awareness, with intention, with conscious control over what you're programming into your consciousness. You're no longer a passive receiver of other people's beliefs. You become the architect of your own mental framework. This is where the real journey begins, because once you understand this principle, you start seeing your entire life through a different lens. Every limitation you've accepted, every boundary you've respected, every ceiling you've bumped up against, all of these were installed through the same process you're about to use to remove them. The person who told you that making money is hard repeated that belief until you internalized it. The experiences that seemed to prove you're not good enough happened because you'd already accepted that story as truth. And your consciousness dutifully arranged circumstances to match that belief. But imagine what happens when you deliberately choose a new pattern and repeat it with the same intensity that your old limitations were installed. You're not fighting against reality. You're recognizing that what you called reality was always just a reflection of your deepest accepted beliefs. And if consciousness truly interacts with an informational field, if Jung was right about the mind's ability to construct experience, then this exercise becomes far more than self-improvement. It becomes a key to accessing entirely different versions of what your life can be. The transformation isn't gradual. It's more like a sudden shift where everything that seemed impossible yesterday suddenly becomes obvious today. That's what happens when a mental barrier dissolves. The world doesn't change. Your perception of what's available to you changes, and opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. Drop a comment saying, "I see it now," if you're beginning to recognize these patterns in your own life. So let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice, because understanding the theory is one thing, but implementation is where the real magic happens. This isn't some complicated ritual requiring specific tools, perfect timing, or mystical knowledge. The technique is deceptively simple, which is exactly why most people dismiss it before ever trying it. They're looking for something more elaborate, more complex, assuming that true transformation must be difficult. But sometimes the most powerful tools are the ones hiding in plain sight. Here's what you're going to do. For 7 consecutive nights, you'll set aside a quiet moment, could be before bed, early morning, whenever you can be alone with your thoughts without interruption. During this time, you're going to repeat a single affirmation 100 times out loud, not silently in your head, but spoken aloud. There's a reason for this. When you speak something audibly, you're engaging more of your senses, creating a stronger imprint on your consciousness. You hear your own voice declaring this new reality, and that auditory component reinforces the pattern you're installing. The affirmation itself needs to be carefully chosen. This isn't about picking something that sounds nice or copying what someone else used. It needs to resonate with what you genuinely want to transform in your life. Maybe it's, "My life is transforming for the better," or "I am prosperous and everything flows in my favor." Whatever phrase you choose, it should feel significant to you, aligned with a deep desire that's been waiting for permission to become real. This isn't window dressing. You're selecting the new blueprint that your consciousness will use to reconstruct your experience. The environment matters more than you might think. Find a space where you can be relaxed, where your body isn't tense or distracted. Take a few deep breaths before you begin. Let your shoulders drop. Release the tension you're carrying. This relaxed state lowers the mental resistance that normally guards against new information entering your subconscious. When you're calm and open, the doors to deeper levels of your mind swing wide. Now here's where most people get it wrong, and this is the difference between wasting your time and actually creating change. The mind doesn't respond to words alone. It responds to the energy, the conviction, the feeling behind those words. If you're reciting mechanically, like reading a phone book, you're just moving your mouth. Nothing shifts, nothing changes. But when you repeat with genuine emotional involvement, when you feel each word as if it's already an undeniable truth, that's when something profound begins to happen. At first, I'll be honest. With you, it might feel awkward. You might feel like you're just saying random phrases into empty air. Your rational mind might whisper that this is silly, that nothing is happening. But if you push through that initial resistance and continue with focus and feeling, you'll notice something subtle beginning to shift. It's not dramatic at first. It's more like a gentle current pulling you into a different mental state. Your breathing might change. Your body might relax even further. And then, somewhere around the 30th or 40th repetition, you enter what I can only describe as a flow state, where the affirmation stops feeling like words you're forcing out and starts feeling more real than the room you're sitting in. That's the threshold moment. That's when your subconscious stops analyzing and starts accepting. Your body and mind align with the statement as if it's already fact, and that alignment is everything. Type, "I feel this," in the comments if you've ever experienced that moment when something just clicks into place. Once you've completed those 100 repetitions, here's something that might seem counterintuitive, but is absolutely critical to understand. You need to stop. Just stop. Don't try to analyze what happened. Don't sit there mentally checking to see if anything's different. Don't start questioning whether you did it right or if it's working. This part trips up more people than you'd imagine because we've been conditioned to believe that constant effort equals results. We think we need to push, control, monitor every step of the process. But that kind of micromanaging actually sabotages the very mechanism you just activated. Jung spent considerable time studying this phenomenon, how excessive conscious control interferes with the mind's natural creative processes. When you grip too tightly, when you obsessively watch for results, you're essentially telling your subconscious that you don't really believe the new pattern has taken hold. You're operating from doubt rather than certainty. But when you complete the repetitions and then simply release, when you let go of the need to see immediate proof, you send an entirely different signal. You're communicating to the deepest levels of your consciousness that this new reality is already accepted, already done, already integrated. This release is where the real transformation begins to unfold. It's in that space between planting the seed and checking every hour to see if it's sprouted. Nature doesn't work through force. Consciousness doesn't work through force. There's an organic unfolding that happens when you stop interfering with it. Think about trying to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more elusive sleep becomes. But the moment you stop trying, you drift off naturally. The same principle applies here. What happens next is where things get genuinely fascinating, because the people who've actually committed to this 7-night journey report experiences that sound almost too synchronistic to be coincidence. Some notice subtle shifts within just the first few days, an unexpected message from someone they hadn't heard from in years, an unusual invitation that opens a door they didn't even know existed. Little moments that seem orchestrated, as if reality itself is responding to the new frequency they're broadcasting. Those who focus their affirmations on prosperity often report the most intriguing stories: money showing up in unexpected ways, a forgotten refund, an out-of-the-blue freelance opportunity, even finding cash they'd tucked away and forgotten about. It's not always dramatic windfalls, but there's this unmistakable pattern of resources flowing more easily, as if invisible obstacles have been removed from the path. People working on confidence affirmations describe something equally powerful: a sudden surge of motivation to take action on things they'd been procrastinating on for months or even years. That internal resistance that kept them paralyzed simply dissolves. By the end of the 7 nights, many describe it like an internal blockage that they didn't even fully realize has been cleared away. Ideas that were stuck suddenly start flowing. Intuition becomes sharper, more reliable. Problems that seemed insurmountable begin appearing less solid, more manageable. And here's what makes it undeniable. These aren't people trying to convince themselves something changed. They're genuinely surprised by how differently they're experiencing their daily reality, how circumstances that would have previously triggered anxiety or doubt now barely register as obstacles. The shift isn't just internal. It's reflected in the external world, responding as if reading from a new script. Opportunities appear. People respond to you differently. Decisions that once felt paralyzing become clear. Comment: "It's already happening," if you're sensing this shift is possible for you. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I want you to know that says something about you. Most people hear about techniques like this and never even consider trying them. They dismiss it, make excuses, or convince themselves it won't work before they've given it a chance. But you're still here, which tells me you're someone who's genuinely ready for transformation, someone who understands that the most powerful tools are often the ones that seem too simple to matter. If this content resonated with you, if something I shared here sparked recognition or gave you a new perspective on what's possible, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I create videos like this because I believe this information needs to reach people who are ready to use it, people like you who are willing to look beyond surface-level explanations and dive into the real mechanics of consciousness and transformation. By subscribing, you're making sure you don't miss the next piece of this puzzle. And leave me a comment saying, "This message was meant for me, so I know you made it all the way through." I read these comments, and there's something powerful about declaring your intention publicly, even in such a small way. It's another form of commitment, another signal to your subconscious that you're serious about this shift. If you found value in what we explored today, go ahead and click that like button. It helps this video reach others who need to hear it, and honestly, it lets me know that what I'm sharing is landing the way I hope it does, as a genuine conversation between people who are on this path together. There's a video right here that takes this even deeper, exploring what happens after you've completed the 7 nights and how to maintain that new frequency permanently. Click and continue with me over there, because this is just the beginning of what becomes possible when you truly understand how consciousness works.